When most people picture depression, they picture someone who can't get out of bed, someone crying, someone who's clearly, visibly struggling. But that's not what depression looks like for millions of people. For a large portion of those living with depression, the signs are hidden, even from themselves. They're productive. They show up. They sometimes seem like the most together person in the room, and inside, something is profoundly wrong. Today, we're going beyond the standard list and into 5 signs of depression that almost nobody talks about, because they look nothing like what we've been taught to expect. Sign number 1, irritability and anger, not sadness. The DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, includes irritability as a primary symptom of depression, particularly in adolescents and men. Yet public awareness of depression overwhelmingly focuses on sadness as the defining emotional feature. For many people, particularly men, who are statistically less likely to express vulnerability and more likely to express distress through anger, depression manifests as chronic low-level irritability, short temper, and a hair-trigger frustration response that seems disproportionate to its triggers. The person is depressed, but what's visible is that they're angry. This misidentification has serious consequences. Men with depression are significantly more likely to go undiagnosed and untreated than women, partly because neither they nor the people around them recognize anger as a depression symptom. A 2013 study in JAMA Psychiatry found that when irritability-based depression symptoms were included in assessment criteria, the gender gap in depression rates essentially disappeared. Sign number 2, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. Almost everyone knows that depression can cause sleep problems, insomnia, early waking, hypersomnia, but fewer people recognize the specific quality of depression-related fatigue. It is not relieved by rest. You can sleep 10 hours and wake up feeling as tired as when you went to bed. This isn't a sleep disorder. It's a neurochemical one. Depression is associated with dysregulation of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, all of which play critical roles in energy regulation, motivation, and the brain's capacity to experience reward. The result is a fatigue that goes beyond the physical. It's the weight of having to manufacture enthusiasm for things that once generated it naturally. It's what many people describe as living in slow motion, getting through tasks that used to be effortless at what feels like enormous personal cost. This often gets dismissed as laziness by others, and crucially, by the depressed person themselves. Sign number 3, loss of interest in things you used to love. Anhedonia, the clinical term for inability to feel pleasure in previously enjoyable activities, is one of the 2 core symptoms of major depressive disorder, according to the DSM-5. Yet, it's one of the least discussed, partly because it's so easy to rationalize. I've just outgrown that hobby. I'm too busy these days. Maybe I was never that into it. These self-explanations are compelling, but when multiple activities that once generated genuine joy, music, sport, creativity, socializing, sex, food, all simultaneously lose their pull, this is not maturation or boredom. It's the signature neurological footprint of depression. The brain's reward circuitry, particularly the mesolimbic dopamine system, is demonstrably altered in depressive states. The anticipation of reward and the experience of reward both diminish. Things that should feel good simply don't. The person is not choosing not to enjoy things. Their brain is failing to generate the neurochemical response that constitutes enjoyment. Sign number 4, cognitive impairment, brain fog. Depression is frequently described in emotional terms, but its impact on cognition is just as significant and far less talked about. Research published in Psychological Medicine found that up to 94% of people with major depressive disorder experience what's clinically called cognitive dysfunction, difficulty concentrating, impaired memory, slowed thinking, and difficulty making decisions. In practice, this looks like forgetting things you've known for years, reading the same paragraph 3 times, losing track of conversations, making simple errors in work you could do in your sleep. This is often intensely frightening for high-functioning people who have often built their identity and self-worth around intellectual capacity. The cognitive impairment of depression can be mistaken for early-onset dementia, ADHD, or simple burnout. Neuroimaging research shows measurable changes in prefrontal cortex activity in depressed individuals, the region responsible for executive function, working memory, and decision-making. This isn't a metaphorical fog. It's a documented neurological change. Sign number 5. High functioning on the outside, empty on the inside. Perhaps the most hidden form of depression is what clinicians sometimes call smiling depression, or more formally, high-functioning depression, often classified as persistent depressive disorder or dysthymia. This is the person who goes to work, meets their deadlines, smiles at the right moments, maintains relationships, and comes home and sits in silence for an hour because the performance of wellness is exhausting. High-functioning depression is dangerous in a specific way. It hides. The external performance of being okay masks the internal reality from others, and often from the depressed person themselves, who compares their invisible symptoms to the visible suffering they associate with real depression, and concludes they can't be that bad off. A 2014 study found that people with high-functioning depression often delay seeking help for years, sometimes decades. Because they are managing, they believe they should simply manage better. The bar they apply to themselves is not, "Are you suffering?" but, "Are you still producing?" And as long as the answer is yes, the suffering goes unaddressed. Depression is one of the most prevalent mental health conditions in the world, affecting an estimated 280 million people globally, according to the World Health Organization. And yet its most common presentations, the hidden ones, the angry ones, the exhausted but functioning ones, are exactly the ones we talk about least. If this video described you, or someone you love, that recognition is valuable. Depression is highly treatable. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy and interpersonal therapy, has strong research support. So does medication for moderate to severe presentations. You don't have to be visibly falling apart to deserve support. Quiet suffering still counts. A note at the end of this video. If you're going through something personally, please consider reaching out to a mental health professional or someone you trust. You don't have to figure this out alone. Subscribe for more mental health content that takes the complexity seriously.